I will openly be talking about spoilers. If you watch this and then complain in the comments that I spoiled something for you, that's on you. But if you'd like to yell at me on Twitter, you can send all your messages right here. So I'm going to do this review a little bit different and start on a positive note by beginning at the end.
No, I thought we'd try something a bit different.
And by the end, I mean endgame. So to start, let me just say that you can find fun in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. It is unfortunately buried underneath an impressively bad story that's more like a 10-hour movie than a game, with a few tutorials interjected between funny gags.
Isn't Deadshot supposed to be white?
And moments that range from poorly written,
I'm your daddy now, shark,
to downright distasteful sprinkled in. But more on those issues later, because believe it or not, I do think that Suicide Squad has something interesting going for it in the endgame. The gameplay is kind of good once it clicks. Traversal, build opportunities in endgame, and general mechanics after you get to put something together that makes sense for your character is fun. It doesn't excuse the repetitive nature of missions and overall lack of variety in activities though. There's also little to no incentive to keep going once you get to around mastery level 35 of the endgame grind. And even there, you're really only doing it for gold outfits and a gear chase. And that gear chase is done by playing the same 3 missions until you can't take it anymore. The 3 missions available in endgame that actually progress your character forward in some meaningful way are protect the plant, collect charges, and smash crystals. Sometimes you'll need to search Metropolis for more Promethium currency by grinding support squad missions or finding and killing red squid things in order to enter the endgame challenges, which is just an incredibly dumb loop. It would be like requiring you to do 3 public events before you could run a strike in Destiny 2. There's absolutely no reason for it except to pad out endgame playtime. But this is the one and only place in the entire game you should be challenging yourself or testing out a build because you actually get rewards worth the effort. There are other difficult challenges that don't reward you appropriately, including the hardcore killing time missions where you go into the Elseworlds for as long as you can survive and then escape to get loot that kinda stinks. Or you can kill Brainiac again on hardcore mode, but this time he'll have even more health and even more annoying mechanics to deal with. But there's absolutely no incentive that I can see for a player to do these more than once to unlock higher tier endgame missions that give you the best gear, better XP, and can be completed faster. The Master Brainiac fight should be this game's equivalent of a raid and reward a cool armor set at the very least, but there's no reason to ever do it again after clearing it one time. But build-wise, there's actually a lot you can do here once you parse the somewhat overwhelming amount of information on each piece of gear. You can re-roll a piece of loot with Penguin for better stats, or build a new piece of gear altogether. You can master it at Toyman and then re-roll each perk for the exact roll that you want. And you can even level up your grenades at Poison Ivy or swap the Affliction link to it. All of this is really good actually. The game will let you perfect your build once you get a drop, and I actually really appreciate this component of the game. It's a lot to take in when you start diving into it, but once you figure it out, this is really, really great. I wish more looter shooters added some of these mechanics. I really like how this lets you experiment for a low cost, but I do wonder how I'd even go about farming the currency once I run out. So remember, people are finding fun in the endgame, but to get there, you have to do so many unfun things. The support squad missions are a great example of terrible implementation. In one, for example, they make you stand around waiting to fire counter shots as that's the only way you can damage enemies. They're all just some kind of tutorial that you've already been taught when playing through the campaign, and once you get through those missions, you then go and grind 3 of them at a harder difficulty until you can't take it anymore to unlock the best build the game offers. My build was focused on electricity and has worked extremely well through rank 35. I do realize fire is broken and scaling incorrectly off of enemy health, but it seems like the devs will be patching that shortly. Still, it's enjoyable finding combinations of gear that will do the most damage on the battlefield. And that extends beyond your main character, as the bots you set up can also be given gear that help you succeed. This is the fun that people found in Suicide Squad that is buried under a bad story, bad UI, and a boring grind. It is there, and it takes far, far too long to get to it. It doesn't excuse the other problems, but it does show Rocksteady was onto something underneath all the valid criticisms they have received. They just failed spectacularly in delivery of almost every other aspect of the game, and that's a shame.
Hey, Suicide Squad! Fuck you!
I do think they succeed in some important ways, though. Character models are superb. Voice acting is superb.
Yes, this is a parallel universe.
Cutscenes are superb. The little details and Easter eggs in Metropolis are wonderful. But these positives are overshadowed because of the poor writing,
Are we done with your bad stand-up routine?
repetitive, similar-looking purple enemies, traversal that encourages you to be in the air more than on the ground, and comparisons to Arkham Knight that has a world design which blows this out of the water. So let's really get into my criticisms here. The TLDR of my complaints that I'll get into now is that the story is just so very bad. The boss fights range from okay to terrible. The gameplay loop is repetitive. The UI really is that bad at times. Loadouts are currently broken. You're forced repeatedly into menus you can't skip. Crossplay breaks achievements. Keybinds reset if you enter co-op.
Your counters weren't working?
But overall, the game is still really easy. Even on the hardest difficulty, I never really felt challenged. And even the extremely positive Steam reviews echo most of the criticisms the game has received and have Steam reviewers saying that this is not a game you should pay $70 for. But the biggest problem is that the story just doesn't work on so many levels.
I thought I was gonna have to hunt you jailbirds down. Like dogs.
Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is a game I really wanted to love, but it is deeply flawed in so many respects. The Suicide Squad movie wasn't the best, but I did like how it leaned into the absurdity of some DC lore and actually had some characters with conflicting backstories like Rick Flag and Peacemaker who come to a head by the end of the movie. I don't know the comics very well, but even just a cursory look into it, the John Ostrander line that has Amanda Waller manipulating Batman into helping the squad do her bidding could have been an interesting template for the story. And on the Brainiac front, there's the New 52 Superman Doom story where Brainiac, Superman, and Doom combined into a corrupted, super powerful being. That would have been a much more interesting fight than how this game ended. I think we could all imagine a dozen ways the game could have ended on a more interesting boss fight or story beat. And strangely enough, even the WB published Injustice 2 did a better job of having the villains and heroes team up to defeat Brainiac while dancing that gray morality line throughout.
I'm building a new army to protect the Earth. There are billions of warriors trapped in Brainiac's collection.
And that's a big reason why I was so disappointed with the story we got here. Everyone sees the potential of a name like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and yet somehow Rocksteady managed to fail on nearly every single front from a storytelling perspective, except for a funny gag here and there.
Did you get him?
Not only is it terribly paced, it's also terribly written, and even a casual comic book fan like myself can see that there's a wealth of storytelling to pull inspiration from. Instead, we got something that doesn't work. It's so bad that most are so put off by the end of the story that they just stop playing. The problems start from the moment you begin the game because there is zero setup to get the player on board with killing the Justice League. It just dumps you into a tutorial. Like, if you told me the Justice League were all clones up front, I would not be as put off by this. They would just be enacting their fantasy of killing the Justice League, not literally pissing on them, which is what actually happens. Seeing Boomerang pee on the corpse of the Flash, or almost pee on him to set up the worst dick joke I have ever heard, isn't something people are going to like. And it's off-putting to see Deadshot execute Green Lantern for, why was he mad again?
We're out on good behavior.
Oh yeah, because the Green Lantern put him in prison for a murder he openly admits to having committed. I feel bad about his tarnished relationship with his daughter, but he's a murderer, and that dichotomy of fatherhood versus being a murderer is explored in the comics. Here, we're just supposed to be rooting for this execution of Green Lantern. None of their stories really get proper exploration. No character, good or bad, has a fulfilling arc. Now, a lot of people have said that the Batman death was disrespectful. I would say that it was just incredibly dumb. The writing shows a fundamental misunderstanding of what this Harley character has done or been through. This is not Suicide Squad movie Harley. This is Arkhamverse Harley, and the writers fail so spectacularly in her character growth that the murder of Batman in this game is just stupid. They just bring him to a bench and kill him to get Superman to come and fight. The lead up was also bad, making players pull Scarecrow toxin levers 16 times while stuck in slow motion. The Batman boss fight was then a bullet sponge that encouraged you to take Harley, who by the way has some of the worst range attacks in the entire squad, for the fight. And the fight itself is boring and tedious. The actual death on the bench also makes no sense. Why does Batman even need to die here? Why wouldn't Brainiac send out Superman to stop them from murdering his top soldier? It doesn't work narratively. Harley doesn't grow as a character. The scene has Harley, who is a murderer, give a lecture about how Batman caused long-term mental and emotional damage to everyone he knew. Even the dedication to Kevin Conroy is sullied seconds later when your character quips about the cool loot he got.
Ooh, you cannot put a price on this stuff.
It is so tone deaf on Rocksteady's part. I will say, the Green Lantern fight was miles better than the others, but it still boiled down to counter his attacks before doing damage. A template reused from the Flash fight again and later with Brainiac. But after the execution of Green Lantern, Shark puts on the ring and starts using it. I admit this is a cool moment, and for a second, you think they're just going to run with it, before the ring corrupts Shark, falls off, and is never seen again. And I've seen plenty of Green Lantern fans point out that this is not how the rings work, so it doesn't even make sense anyway. The ring chooses who gets to wear it. The squad wouldn't be able to just cut off Green Lantern's finger like they do and plop it on. This could have easily been explained by the ring choosing Shark, but instead, it comes off like a fundamental misunderstanding of the Green Lantern rings. I think the Lex Luthor character is also misunderstood. There's a passage going around about how he praises Wonder Woman for solving toxic masculinity. Now, this term has been widely panned by everybody, especially South Park, but my problem with it in this instance is that an egotistical billionaire is writing about the Amazons and praising them for solving this issue. If you dive further into Wonder Woman lore, you'd know that they didn't really solve toxic masculinity as much as they instead literally discard male babies in the New 52 Wonder Woman storyline that explores this question. Wonder Woman finds out about this and stops the Amazons from this barbaric practice. So this whole passage, and to a lesser extent the Green Lantern passage, is written from the perspective of a man, Lex Luthor, who is probably the most toxic person on Earth. He literally uses people for his own gain. He wouldn't write this. There was an offhanded comment in the Justice League series that has always stuck with me, where he cures cancer and can give it to people at a low cost in a single dose, but instead tells his assistant to make it last a patient's entire lifetime so he makes more money. That's the piece of garbage Lex is. That's the piece of garbage we know. He wouldn't have written this. He would more likely despise Wonder Woman just as he detests Superman. So that's my way of saying this whole entry is just bad writing and another example of a failure to understand these characters. I don't really want to bring this one up, but seeing we're here, let's talk about the butt grab. It didn't really bother me all that much, if I'm being honest. I laughed. But imagine if King Shark or Deadshot gave Harley's cheek a squeeze or even a glance. We can't keep pretending that doing this to a man is okay if we would be pissed off had this happen to a woman. It's a double standard, and it's been pointed out as such by many people online. So while I didn't care that much, I think it's a good point that's been brought up by a lot of people. Sexual assault? It's bad.
Worth it.
Now, let's talk about Wonder Woman. I loved that Wonder Woman was out there the whole time trying to fix the problem because it gave me hope this story was going somewhere interesting. The moments she appeared are a treat and a highlight from the campaign. There's even a brief moment where she uses the lasso of truth, and we get a glimpse at the real Barry Allen telling us we really do need to kill the Justice League.
Barry! Please, tell me how.
Harry!
You have to kill us, Diana. We have to die to save the world.
But it's never revisited, and Wonder Woman is wasted like the rest of the heroes. This would have been a great way to have impactful story beats. Instead, they just kill off Wonder Woman in a fight where she has stabbed Superman in the heart with kryptonite. Yet again, wasting her potential as a hero. And they don't do a good job explaining how Superman can survive being stabbed by kryptonite, but will die to gold kryptonite bullets. If he's immune to one, why wouldn't he also be immune to the other? There's a theory that he and the other members are clones, but if that's true, how did Barry come through with the lasso of truth, and why wasn't it set up in the story? Or at the very least, as a stinger at the ending of this campaign? Instead, we're just left with one of the worst endings I've ever seen in a video game. We kill Brainiac, and they tell us that we need to do it 12 more times.
Once you've defeated all 13 Brainiacs? Yes.
You mean 12?
12 more times over the next year. That sounds awful. Almost as awful as having a 12th level intellect character like Brainiac use the exact same mechanics as a boss we killed hours earlier as his grand plan to stop us. The real shame about all of this is there are glimpses into what could have been. There are some audio logs about the Justice League characters that offer an intriguing backstory.
This Brainiac wants to open negotiations aboard his ship. It's a trap.
Agreed. That much is apparent.
I think the Lex Luthor versus Waller rivalry was one of the more interesting beats, but it doesn't get explored enough. And beyond Waller saying stuff like, "Thank you, Mr. President," we don't really get the notion that she had some great plan to solve all of this. Waller is one of the best foils in all the DC universe, and she spends most of her time on the phone.
I understand, Mr. President.
Now, as a fan of Smallville, I do have to say that I love seeing the alternate reality Lex Luthor come back and be voiced by Corey Burton, who has amazing range, but I do think that they went for a Lionel Luthor style voice here a la Smallville. And while it doesn't seem to be Glover, I was fooled, so I like that a lot. I actually really like the Lex Luthor character overall because we all know he's up to some nonsense. But we never really get to see it pay off. I think that will be explored a bit more in future seasons, and it's not until he's introduced that we get a glimpse of what could have been with Waller. There's something there, and I wish it would have been explored more. But to go back to the boss fights for a second, as many have pointed out, these fights just don't have the nuance they deserve. How do you kill Flash? Bullets. Green Lantern? A bullet. Batman? A bullet from a magic revolver that has a shell casing. Superman, a gold bullet. Brainiac, bullets. It just feels so uninspired. Like, why not have the ring choose shark? And that's how Green Lantern is taken out. Why not have Batman succumb to the realization of the atrocities he's committed while under the effects of fear toxin? Almost anything is better than this. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is a deeply flawed game. Always online, should have been ripped out before launch, but they're taking it out months later, and I think it's going to be too little, too late. I will be amazed if this game survives the first year as Steam concurrents have dwindled. Players have instead reinstalled Batman Arkham Knight, myself included, to revisit the previous Batman game from Rocksteady as opposed to playing more Suicide Squad. I put a lot of time in before I wrote this review because I didn't want some commenters saying, well, what about the Riddler trophies? Or why didn't you even hit level 100 yet? I have done every single thing that this game has to offer, short of grinding out a few achievements for getting a level 50 squad, finishing 100 support missions, or maxing out at level 200 mastery, because there's no reason to do any of it. So you're left with some mechanics in the endgame that I genuinely like, but it's surrounded by mediocrity. And most people aren't going to put in the, 15 hours to find the fun after what is an objectively bad story. Look, I will play any superhero game and each has a glimmer of potential, but this was from Rocksteady. They know how to make greatness, and I think fans feel tremendously let down by what we got here. It betrays their own legacy and goodwill with their community, and that's something that's going to be very hard for them to come back from, especially because the leadership has moved on to create their own studio. I do not recommend this game, even for the good stuff you might find in the endgame. Rocksteady is planning weekly updates, and there is a small but dedicated fan base for Suicide Squad. But will it be enough to keep this game going for years to come? I really don't think so. But I'd love to hear what you think about this game, what you liked, what you didn't like, and more specifically, what did you think about this review? I don't really do reviews much anymore, so hopefully I made my point well enough and didn't forget to mention some random thing. Let me know. A big thank you to you for watching. A big thank you to the members for supporting. If you want to become a member, click that join button. And if you want to see me actually playing this game, I streamed about 5 hours of it when it launched. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye for now, everybody.